I was also going to do a little talk right now for those who have not necessarily familiar with the sort of the history behind sort of call it new space, entrepreneurial space, and be brief. I'm actually hitching a ride off of Sam Coniglio, who is this guy here. And Sam, I met through, works with the Space Tourism Society. He's a talented photographer, tinker, designer, thinker. He's an Apple genius, and he works with John Spencer at the Space Tourism Society, which is how I've met him. And he's a real fun guy, and you can find him at things. I think Sam Coniglio's got a lot of presence on the internet, and he's a great photographer. He's allowed me to use his presentation regarding, can you guys see? Okay. Regarding the sort of a photographic history of the private space movement. And Sam's kind of into Burning Man, the Makers Fair, if you've ever heard of that. There's even a group that does robotics, hand-built robotics, and I'll take it one step further, robotics that serve cocktails, called Robo Exotica. So I think a movement that started out of Austria that has now moved into the Bay Area, and you can look them up online, and I think robotics, which John could probably talk about for hours, is going to have and has probably a lot of background on, is going to have a significant impact on space technology, because it's not all just about people, and it's some of the robotics will be about assisting people. So this is Sam in front of this is the White Knight 2, which is this White Knight 2? Yeah, White Knight 2 over in Mojave up at Scaled Composites. And Scaled Composites is Burt Rattan's company that is specialize in composite development and construction design, and they've created Spaceship One, White Knight, and they've created Spaceship 2, and they're just up the road from here. And let's see the next slide. So I guess 1960s, NASA got us to the moon. It was basically it was a space race versus the Soviet Union, and the incentive was to beat the Russians. That was pretty much it. And then sort of once we got there, it was maybe the next slide. We were like, what's next? There was the space shuttle was started, but one of the presidential administrations sort of didn't really adequately fund it, and the space shuttle has never really met the promises that it was in terms of frequency of flight, the cost, and people know that it's also somewhat dangerous to fly on. There's some people who would say they'd prefer to fly in a Soyuz spacecraft rather than putting themselves in an American spacecraft, and I consider myself a patriot, so what is that telling you? So there's an identity crisis in the 70s at NASA, and I was basically a twinkle in my dad's eye. Okay, next. 1980s, the space shuttle era. This is the era that probably some of us remember really well who were kids, and one of my first memories was going to see a night launch, which was absolute incredible experience. And of course, living in Florida was, and like for any person, was the Challenger crisis was definitely a pivotal moment. So from that point, space shuttle, the manned program goes in circles, and we're kind of meandering. And then next slide. In the 90s, it was the space station era, which was sort of something designed, budget battles with Congress. Some people would say it was designed by Congress, but it is up there, and it is now, I think it's now considered a national laboratory, and it is an asset that hopefully we will still continue to support. They've talked about, I think, deorbiting it, and did they say that they're maybe extending it to 2020, but it seems like we should have it up there for as long as we can. Once you get something up in space, why are you going to bring it back down? It seems, I'm scratching my head on that one, but if anybody has not seen the new module that was just attached to it, was it ESA? What's the new one called? That's got all the windows. Cupola. Thank you. It's pretty cool. So look up Cupola on YouTube, and you can see some great videos and photos. And there's a ribbon cutting ceremony on it. Okay, next slide. So meanwhile, I guess during the 90s, I don't know if you guys can see that, but we'll build rockets for food. So basically the private industry was sort of, you basically, to make a living, you had to work for NASA or be a military contractor, and there was a thing called the giggle factor, where people said, you know, space tourism or private space industry. They're like, yeah, sure, right. Next slide. And then, so there was something percolating in the mid-90s that was part of a DARPA program called the Delta Clipper, the DCX. And it was the first fully reusable rocket ship. And it did fly. You can look, I was looking at some videos last night. You can look up YouTube. It's actually kind of hard to find the videos. I think I found under Delta Clipper. It wasn't under, but it's pretty cool. I think it flew to 10,000 feet, but it was autonomous. It hovered. It transversed. It was pretty awesome. And I think the turnaround time initially for this thing was 24 hours to refuel and fly this thing again. And Sam worked, I think, as a technical writer for McDonnell Douglas, I believe, on this project. And so the potential of this was prove NASA wasn't only a game in town, potential cheap access, new markets, a reusable vehicle. However, it was killed, and so it sort of went away. However, it has sort of come back in a way. If you've heard of a company called Blue Origin, which is the space company that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has created. It's, I think, based on the DC Clipper, or DCX, excuse me. Next slide. So the DCX inspired several businesses and organizations. You have Space Dev, XCore, SpaceX, Kelly Space, Rotary Rocket, and there's probably a million stories and that I mean, just John. I mean, you probably know a ton of stories about some of the trials and tribulations and probably some of the comedy of errors over the years and the money that was spent. And one quick story is Rotary Rocket on the end, which when they also built a vehicle that's insane looking, and it's worth if you look it up on YouTube, it looks like the DC Clipper with a helicopter blades on top of it. They ran out of money, and they literally couldn't even move the vehicle. So they're still in Mojave. The rotary rocket, the Rotan rocket. Is that what's called, the Rotan?
The Rotan.
The Rotan. Does that have anything to do with Burt Rutan? Or is
no,
it
it's just something that spins.
Oh, just something that spins. Well, they were going to move it to the Air and Space Museum down in San Diego, and it's just too large to move. I think, but they moved it like from one side of the
They tried to pick it up with an Army helicopter one time, and they picked it up in heavy winds for some reason. It started blowing around, so they set it down in a hurry, set the helicopter down on top of the Rotan, and punched a hole in the bottom of the helicopter, and pretty much gave up after that.
I wonder if there's a video of that incident.
I'm not sure there is.
Well, there's videos of it. So if you ever want something really weird looking flying, look up Rotary Rocket Company. So they're no longer around, but from the ashes from that company, a success story. XCore Aerospace, which is an engineering firm in Mojave, California, they, I think, purchased some of the intellectual property, and some of the employees from the ashes of Rotary Rocket went to form XCore. They said, you know, our job's not done. So, like many businesses, one fails, and from the ashes, you figure out how can we do things the right sort of way. And of course, it'd be, you know, you've got Armadillo, which is John Carmack, who's a video game designer out of Texas. He's got a company working with the Rocket Racing League, and he was a finalist in the Lunar Lander Challenge, which was a NASA-sponsored innovation competition program. Virgin Galactic. I mean, got Zero Gravity Corporation, and probably another important factor, and I learned this from John, is that the Zero Gravity. There's like this group right here, Zero Gravity Corporation. They're basically, they provide these parabolic flights for weightlessness, for entertainment, fun, as well as scientific research. So for a couple $1,000s, an individual here on Earth can have a space experience. These things, for us to be involved in space, are not just about going to space and having experiences, as I said, up there, but it's using space